All right, welcome to the Airiam Podcast. This podcast covers topics related to cyber and human resilience. The content's geared towards owners and CEOs of small to medium-sized companies, as well as other IT and cybersecurity leaders. My name is Bill Bowman, and I'm the marketing director at Airiam. Our episode today, we're going to be covering resilience in the face of the recent tech industry turmoil that has been happening. So in the tech sector, as many people know, layoffs have been happening at the big tech companies, Meta, Google, and others. And then at Silicon Valley Bank, they faced a run on deposits, which resulted in the FDIC taking over. And recently, other banks have been showing signs of stress as well. So first, we're going to look at what's happening on the ground from more of a human perspective, a perspective of human resilience. And Airiam's Vivian Lee is going to be joining us on that topic. She's in the Silicon Valley area, so can speak to her firsthand experience. Then we're also going to zoom out and see, what can average everyday companies around the country, what should they keep in mind as they're hearing about some of this turmoil, some of this noise and even panic? What's important for them to know in order to stay secure and to stay efficient and operational. So joining me again is my co-host, Art O'Kane. Art, how are you today?
Doing well, Bill. Thanks for having me on again.
Nice. And like I mentioned, our guest is Airiam Marketing Associate Vivian Lee. So Vivian, welcome to the show. You do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but it's great that you're able to get out here and share your experience. So we have one question we like to ask all guests to kick things off, which is, what is your morning routine? How do you get going every day?
Hello. So the funny thing for me is that since I work East Coast hours, I start way earlier than most people do in my area. So in the morning, actually the first thing I will do is I'll wash my face really quick and then I'll jump in for our morning meetings. And then after that, that's when I start doing like my morning routines while checking my emails and stuff. So that might be walking the dog, getting some water. And then as I'm working, I might have a bite to eat or something. But all of this is while working East Coast hours, and then because I do all of that, I get off earlier than most people in my area, so that's kind of nice.
So you get to get a little more time in the evenings, but you're up and working with those East Coast hours. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, to kick things off, what's happening in the past couple of weeks for you, in Silicon Valley, in your area? I know you live close by. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so it's very interesting right now because, as everyone knows, there's been a bunch of layoffs in the tech world. Luckily, I am not super affected by it, but a lot of people around me, a lot of my friends actually, they were recently laid off from the big companies like from Workday and Salesforce and Meta, like these big companies that you would think would have stability suddenly dropped so many people. And I think we are feeling it the most in Silicon Valley because that's where a majority of these people are working, in the offices and such. And then on top of that, there was the news of the Silicon Valley Bank having loads of issues, and now we are seeing concern where, since they focused on small businesses and startups, a lot of small businesses and startups are also putting in hiring freeze on their own companies, right? And so we have this very interesting dynamic of these big companies not only laying off people, but putting in hiring freeze, and these small companies also not hiring at all.
Yep. Yeah, I think the thing that's interesting is that there's still that talent gap, and companies are still desperate for people, and the need is there. But economically, everybody's putting on a hiring freeze or laying off people. So companies are stressed more and more for talent. just because of the economic situation. And, so companies aren't able to innovate the way that they were able to. Security engineers are needed everywhere, but they're getting laid off. And it's making an interesting mess out of the job market because it's flooding all this labor back into the job market. And we were right at a place, like, economically, where people were starting to get ready to end the wage stagnation, where people's wages were finally starting to climb. And then these layoffs happen, and now we're back to a really competitive job situation where it's really, if you want a job, you have to take a cut, in order to get in on one of these companies now. And if they're hiring at all. So yeah, it's a really interesting situation for companies because they're still having to produce and figure out how to be competitive and innovative and still how to secure their stuff. But with these hiring freezes going on, it's crazy. And with SVB, luckily that was taken care of with the Fed stepping in and really helping, even though FDIC is only backing up to $250,000 on deposits. They said, really, for this, we'll cover it because there's so much riding on SVB. But that is indicative of really, risk industry-wide right now, is that we went through a period of really low interest rates to now a period of high interest rates. And during that period of low interest rates, banks invested in bonds in order to continue making money. And now that's biting everyone in the butt. So it's like, that's affecting the tech industry first right now, but it could affect more. And, in our industry, luckily, we're not we're not in the startup space. We're not, using SVB, but there are many of our partners and supply chain that are, and that could add some more risk to us.
Complex situation with the finance and everything. So Vivian, going back to your personal experiences and people that how have the layoffs, how have your friends, your connections, your maybe your family, how have they been taking the layoffs? What's that experience been like? How have they tried to be resilient through that experience and finding a new jobs, right, in their cases?
Yeah, I mean, like, the first thing that I've seen is, like, obviously people are trying to optimize their networking. And the great thing is, in the midst of all these layoffs, a lot of people have been very kind and very generous in opening up their own networking and saying, like, if you've been affected, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or through email, and we can see what we can do for each other. I've seen lots of my friend groups create subgroups within Discord or whatever else, where they are checking each other's resumes, sending each other links to different leak codes or programs where they can brush up on their skills, keep going and learning new different things. And I mean, people are taking it as well as they can. But I know of some people, they got very lucky with their severance, so they don't have to worry about it as much. And other people that they are rushing because they were not so lucky. And they are at this point where some people are kind of giving in to that pay cut, right, that Art was talking about, and just getting a job just to get a job to make sure that they can keep whatever lifestyle that they have, or, keep a roof over their heads. And I see other people where they're able to take some time for themselves and their family. So it's a very interesting dynamic, at least to see within my own friend group, where it's kind of half and half. Some people are extremely worried and some people are taking it easy. Regardless, people, all of them, are having issues finding a job in general, either a job that fits the original description that they were working within, or a job that fits the pay that they were originally working with. Because that's even something that, regardless if they were working in tech or another industry, I am seeing a lot more companies, they are only offering contract positions, so no benefits of any kind, or they are offering the same job with a massive cut, like by thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be really hurtful right now. With the amount of inflation that we've seen and just how life is expensive now.
Mhm.
It's and especially in the Bay Area, it's always been expensive. But in the last couple of years, with so much inflation, everything's more expensive than it was. So people really rely on those higher incomes now. And when you're in a place where you can't get that anymore, if they had savings, then sure, yeah, enjoy some time with your family, and great, that's a great place to be. But most of the world is not in a place where where they can just relax now, and it's really a hard place for people to be. Yeah, so it's inspiring to hear that there are those groups of people that are trying to support each other, like on Discord and everything, and try to say, hey, here's some openings that I found, or something like that, or let me review your resume. That's great, and that's something that a lot of times we're missing because we're trying to be so competitive in our in the job market. But right now I think is a time when people need to lean on each other.
Yeah, have you seen one of the headlines? You see a lot of headlines every day, but one of them is now a lot of other industries beyond tech could use the tech knowledge. Have you seen the people that you're talking about? Are they keeping in tech, like Silicon Valley tech, or are they maybe expanding to remote roles with other industries or other areas, other companies around the country?
Yeah, I mean, I know of a couple of people that they were originally working for like program software, right? But they have switched over to working for the local county or the government, because I believe, could be wrong, but I believe that the government is opening up more like cybersecurity, IT, or tech positions in general, not only to make up for the fact that there are all these layoffs, but also because they also need tech updates, right? Make sure that they are keeping cyber safe and making sure that they are up to date with all the newest practices, etc. I know, however, that these jobs are extremely competitive, of course, and also just, I mean, they don't pay as well. So the lifestyle would have to change if they take those positions.
Yeah, that would be a change in lifestyle, going from Meta or Amazon to a local government. But the tech talent that I can see the benefits of from the government's perspective, and from other companies' perspective, and getting access to that talent. So it's always one constant change, I think, right? So
Right. I did have one question where I've seen like within all these companies, the layoffs are very abrupt and
Mhm.
cold. And I was wondering if there was a particular reason for it, maybe in terms of the cybersecurity or IT aspect.
Yeah, that's something in the past, with companies and leadership that I've had to deal with, and i- it's unfortunate because you want to be able to give somebody a warning. Like, it would be great to be able to say, "Hey, we're doing this, and in 2 weeks, or, prepare to cycle down your team," that kind of thing. But when you communicate that, usually people are like, "Okay, take all the source code, copy it out so I
wow.
can use it at my next job. Grab the customer list so I can keep those contacts." Usually, it's a bunch of risk to the company, or let's grab any computers that aren't bolted down and stuff like that. So it's usually to mitigate the risk. But yeah, it is cold at the time because the company may have been planning that layoff for a month. May have been planning it for weeks ahead of time, and there was ample time to be able to give a warning to the staff. But for security reasons, they're not able to, because it would increase that risk of those confidential information being leaked. And it's very common that when somebody does know they're going to be let go, it's almost habitual and instinctual for them to collect all of their projects that they've done and take it with them, and that's really owned by the company. So it's taking your source code, if you work at AMD, and taking it over to Intel, is going to be a problem. So, and the same with any role in any company, they want to keep that intellectual property in-house. But that's the core reason to it. It's just to reduce that security risk. But it definitely is cold, and it doesn't leave a good impression in anyone's mind, and there's not really a good way to do it. Like when you do layoffs, you're trying to communicate the situation and why to the employees, but it always feels cold because you look at somebody like Amazon and you're like, okay, you profited billions of dollars. You could float this team for decades without worrying about really a negative cash impact. But they're trying to control their margins, and when a large corporation is trying to control their margins, they're cutting people, and that really is the cold part about it. Is you see a large company that really could sustain that staff deciding not to, and that's the profits over people decision that they're making. That's really the coldest part of it all, is when the company actually is doing okay and they're just hungry for more. But yeah, as far as the risk and mitigating that's really why the cutoff is so short. And the only thing that we can do to really make that better is getting a good severance package, communicating to it well, offering references and offering your network to the team when they're laid off, and say, hey, I'm sorry this happened. Is there anything I can do to help you line up your next position? And try to help support them through it instead of being cold to them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, that it's a necessary evil to kind of do it that way. So, zooming out a little bit to other companies, other organizations around the states, in Pennsylvania and Maryland, where we have a lot of clients, for example, if some of them might be concerned that maybe they use a technology from a startup, or they use a technology, they might be concerned about the stability of some of the solution providers that they have. I guess, in the first place, what are some ways, or what are some methods that companies can initially evaluate their partners, or maybe now they can say, I rely on this partner for payroll, I rely on this partner for HR. What are some good ways that organizations can look at their partners and make sure they're stable, make sure they're secure, make sure that they're not at risk there? Or Vivian, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, Vivian, do you have anything before I go and jump into a diatribe here?
I don't know. You're the expert, Art, in this.
Yeah. So my thought about it is, anytime you're choosing a company that is a smaller company or a VC-backed company, there's a chance that company is going to fail. Regardless of an SVB situation happening, which is almost impossible to foresee. You don't know when somebody's going to run on a bank, but as far as just financial stability of an organization, usually, VC-backed organizations, a large amount of them fail. And VC in general, when they're doing a startup, they're hedging bets, and they might have 10 companies they're investing in. They only expect one of them to be a moonshot, and the rest of them they're kind of expecting to fail. So, when we're partnering with a VC-backed company, we understand that, and we understand that, okay, this company is great, but they might not exist in 2 years. So, as a business, it's important to look at those situations and say, okay, do I have an alternate plan? This technology they have is great, but is my entire business riding on this? Is this something I can run without if they fail? Or is there an alternate in the market that I can switch to quickly? So for that reason, I'd say core line of business applications that you're running your whole business on, You should do due diligence behind those technologies. Understand the stability of that company. For instance, Avaya had just declared bankruptcy last year and was, is having issues. So picking Avaya for a phone system might not be the best choice right now. Not saying that their tech is bad, not saying that they might not exist in a couple of years, but if you're doing financial due diligence on your partners and you're really trying to pick the most stable solutions for yourself, doing that kind of due diligence and that risk assessment internally on your partners is an important step. So anything that's your critical line of business, stuff that's running all your sales and your applications and something that's running all of your business, try to pick a stable, long-lasting organization that is going to be there. That doesn't mean don't leverage cool startup tech, because there's innovative stuff you'll never see anywhere else that's coming out of the Valley. There's opportunities to grab stuff and get in early and partner early with a company, so you really become like one of those first logos on their page, and you can. There's a lot of cool opportunities from working with a startup. You just have to. Running a company, you have to hedge your bets and say, okay, this company may not exist in a year. Am I able to put in another solution if I need to later? And just being prepared for that situation. That's my thought about it, is just hedging that risk and not putting my most critical stuff there. But they have great technology, especially on the cybersecurity front. And use it to fill in your stack and to give you a great solution. But when there's a problem, be prepared to rip it out. There's anybody who is in kind of like managed services like us should be in a position where they can rip and replace any piece of software or technology based on the market. And that's not just for when like a VC fails or when an SVB situation happens. There are a lot of companies in the market that kind of vie for market position, and you'll have Trend Micro, and then you'll have Sentinel One and CrowdStrike and Silence and all these EDR partners and Palo Alto, and one year they might be great and the next year they might be awful. When they're awful, you need to be able to just be in a point where you can just replace them. And so that's a part of business resiliency, is just being set up your organization so that you can replace technology whenever you need to, and keep your organization running so it doesn't impact your customers. Okay, this solution doesn't exist anymore, let's just replace it.
Yeah, those are great tips. That leveraging more cutting edge stuff, but at the same time having a solid solution. So, and I, in my past, I've vetting different partners. You want to, if you can talk to a customer of that solution provider, a one-to-one conversation, again, that firsthand testimonial is really good. Looking at the leadership team, if the CEO is fresh graduate from, you gotta evaluate the people, and if you have a connection to people in the company, that's even better. The turmoil, the chaos, the panic that has happened a little bit in the Valley and beyond in the past weeks. When panic happens, scammers are going to take advantage of panic. So this happened during COVID with phishing emails and insurance fraud. Vivian, I guess first, have you noticed any uptick or any trends related to different messages happening in your friend group or anything like that? Or are people trying different things that might be risky on your side?
I don't know if it really has to do with the layoffs per se, but I personally saw an uptick in scams catered towards me when these layoffs started happening. They've been very interesting too, and they're very, like, I don't want to say thorough, but they do pay attention to some details. One of them I get quite consistently is the same recording of someone who claims he's a police officer and that they are taking donations for the local police station, and if I would be willing to contribute to their cause. And of course, like, at first when you get the call and it sounds like an actual police officer, you're like, oh, I'm okay, thank you, and then you hang up, and then you get 3 or 4 of the same person in the same exact tone, and you're like, oh, you're not real. Another interesting one that I've seen that I think like a lot of people don't realize how they work the scam is I'll get a text all in Chinese, and like Google Translate, I can kind of read what it's saying, right? And if I respond, they'll respond back and they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, this is the wrong number, but they'll keep trying to talk to me. And turns out what they're trying to do is they're trying to get your personal information to answer security questions like, what street do you live on? What was your mom's maiden name? Your pet? Whatever the case may be, they will be like trying to talk to you like a friend or whatever to get that information. And you know, they're pretty thorough. They get like your phone number, they get your first and last name, and those are easy things that you can find. But a lot of people don't realize how easy it is. That's actually something that I had to tell to my like college friend group, because a couple of them are younger than me, and they're like, oh, I've been getting a lot of wrong number texts lately. I'm like,
no.
oh, don't respond.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot more of that too. But given your friends with the layoff situation, are you seeing, or are they seeing fake recruiter stuff, where it's a job that doesn't actually exist, a fake recruiter trying to get their personal information, pretending that they have a potential opening. Hey, can I get your information? You know, that kind of thing. Have you heard about that yet?
No, I mean, I haven't seen very many of that, but I think also my friend group is very thorough in terms of making sure that they have a connection there, or that the person is responding with whatever. I may or may not have fallen for it like before, but I also didn't have much information for them to take, so nothing ever came out of it. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if within the next couple weeks I reach out to my friend group and they find out that this position never existed or whatever else.
Yeah, there's been an uptick of that lately, and then of course the big fear after the SVB thing was, and it's still a realistic threat, is that you know, if you have a company, you may receive an email from somebody pretending to be your partner or vendor saying, hey, you know, SVB affected us, here's our new routing and account number to pay your invoice. And you know, it may be a threat actor just trying to get you to pay the wrong person, to pay them instead of the vendor. So there's that to watch out for. So in that situation, voice verifying is always important. So if you ever get an email from someone pretending to be a vendor or pretending to be anybody, and they're asking you for information or asking you to change an account number, the best thing to do is pick up the phone, not dial the number on the email, but go to their website. You know, go to the vendor's website, go to that company's website, pull out their main number, call in, try to get a hold of the person and verify before you make any changes or give them that information. Because people can pretend to be anybody online now. And, you know, so it's so easy to scam people. And right now with everybody just losing their jobs and hungry for jobs, and then the SVB situation, it's like, you know, the market's ripe to trick people.
Out of curiosity, like for the recruiter scam, what information are they trying to get? Like, what should you be careful of giving out, and what should you be watching out to differentiate between a real recruiter and like a scammer?
Well, one that I've seen is where they've stood up a fake brand, but made the brand emulate an existing one. So like where the website was one letter wrong, but all the logos and everything matched. And they had the job application, people filled in the job application, gave like all their history, what high school they went to, what college, what years, like everything. and then when they went to the background check form, they put in their driver's license and social security number and all that stuff. And they had fake Zoom interviews with what seemed like recruiters and what seemed like the next step in the interview. Everything looked legit. And then when they accepted the job, they said, okay, well, here's, can you fill out this form for your benefits, your healthcare information, and fill in this form for your, your direct deposit, that kind of stuff. And put in their checking account number and routing number and everything, into their online form. And it was all fake. They were just gathering all this information about the people, and there was no job. And when the people thought that they had been hired, they tried calling the company and were like, company's like, we didn't hire anybody. We don't have this position. Like, we don't know who you are. We don't know who that recruiter is. That kind of stuff. So, it can go as far as that, but it could just be gathering information and trying to get to you. If a recruiter is like, here, I'm attaching a PDF of, the position, and then that PDF contains malware, that kind of thing. Like, there's a lot of ways that this could be used to scam people and gather information on them so that they can, get their identity, get their bank information, etc. So it's just something to be aware of and kind of verify, because a lot of times the recruiters don't actually work for the companies they're representing. So sometimes it's hard to verify. It's like you're being approached by somebody who, on LinkedIn may work for themselves. And it's hard to understand who's real and who's not. So kind of fishing around for their backstory online so that you actually understand that you're talking to a real person and not a threat actor. But that has happened, that scenario with the fake domain name that was so close to the real one, all the logos, everything looking official, interview process, onboarding process, in order to find out they'd been scammed for all their information.
Wow. Really going for the long con.
Yep. And if they do it to 500 people, they're gathering all that information that they can sell. And
there's no low to what a threat actor will do to get what they are after. So that is crazy. So I think we've had some great tips for both humans to be more resilient. We're learning about how people are helping each other out in the Bay Area and in Vivian's group, and for organizations to be more resilient. So be cautious of your partners, be cautious of others, but don't panic, right? Because panic is what can lead to falling for clicking the phishing email and different things like that. So Vivian, anything else you want to share before we wrap it up as it relates to resilience in the time of this recent tech turmoil?
I guess if I could give like one piece of advice to the people being affected out there, it would be, don't make decisions out of desperation. That's been some good advice that I've heard, and it really holds true. Like, don't be desperate to make a decision, and don't make decisions out of desperation. And I mean, that applies to like when you're responding to recruiters, when you are applying for jobs. There are different ways. I know that things are looking pretty awful, but things will work out.
Mm-hmm.
Great advice. Art, anything else to leave us with?
Just from the business side, a lot of times layoffs are necessary for a business to even survive, and especially a smaller company. And they, it's hard to do those because you're trying to empathize with the people, and then at the same time you're having to put on a cold face so that you can actually get it done without really impacting yourself through it. But for these companies that are having to do a lot of layoffs, I think it's important to be as empathetic as possible, to exit people well and offboard them well from your company. Give them options, give them, as much support as you can on the way out, because their friends still work at your company. And if they're seeing how you're treating people on the way out, that increases insider risk for yourself. Then the people that are left behind may just, quiet quit, rage quit, whatever. There may be IP theft, data theft, stuff like that. There's all kinds of risks that the people that are left behind in the company, could be more risk to the company than the people you laid off. So, it's important to give a great experience all the way around, even when you're offboarding employees, to, make them want to work with you again. Say this, do everything you can to embrace them on the way out and support them on the way out, and then give them an in for when the economy turns around to want to actually work with you again. If you create that kind of situation, then you're not only making it more resilient and supporting your employees on the way out, but you're creating a good environment inside your company where people actually, like to work there, and that's going to pay dividends.
Well, great tips, Art. Great tips and advice, Vivian. So want to thank everyone for listening to our episode. We encourage you to please subscribe to the podcast in whatever platform you're listening to this podcast in. New episodes will typically be coming out every other Wednesday. And for more information on Airiam, please visit airiam.com. Thanks.
Bye.